There is a quiet lie that most human beings carry from the moment they learn their name. It is the belief that this sound, this image, this inner voice is who they are. But listen carefully. The I that you think you are is a story. It is a bundle of memories, habits, and expectations strung together into a mask called the ego. The ego whispers, I am me. I am separate. I must survive. And so, like a shadow, it follows you everywhere, claiming every thought as its own, every fear as proof of its reality. Yet there is a problem. The ego is not what it pretends to be. It is not the deep self. It is not the awareness listening now. It is only a construct, a practical invention of the mind, useful in daily life, but disastrous when mistaken for the truth of existence. Imagine a mask that has been worn for so long the actor forgets his real face. That is the human condition. We have forgotten that the mask is a tool, not the essence. We live as though the costume were our skin. This misunderstanding gives birth to a silent kind of suffering, the constant need to defend me, the endless fear of what might happen to myself, the desperate hunger for recognition, approval, and permanence. And in chasing these illusions, we lose sight of the simplicity of being. But here lies the paradox. The ego is not the enemy. To reject it entirely is to fall into another illusion. It has its place, like a map, like a name tag. The problem is only in forgetting that the map is not the territory, and the name is not the soul. This exploration is not about destroying the ego, it is about understanding it. And in that understanding, a subtle freedom appears, one that allows life to be lived without the constant tension of defending a phantom. So stay here, listen carefully, for what follows may disturb the ground beneath the familiar eye. And if these words stir something in you, if you feel the subtle weight of this truth, consider joining this journey. Subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the deeper invitation to witness your life with fresh eyes beyond the mask. The birth of the ego. Every child begins in a state of wonder. There is no division, no clear boundary between the self and the world. The infant does not yet know where the skin ends and the air begins. It simply is. Breath, warmth, color, sound, all flowing together in a seamless whole. And then something begins to happen. The child hears a name, repeated again and again. John, Sarah, look at you. The name becomes a hook, a thread that gathers every sensation into a center. Slowly, the child learns, this is me. That is not me. This is the quiet birth of the ego. It is not malicious. It is not false in the sense of being useless. It is a necessary stage, a tool the mind creates to navigate the world. Without it, we could not speak, could not organize, could not function in the dance of human society. But notice what has been lost. The world, once seamless, is now divided. Here is me. There is you. Here is inside. There is outside. And from that division flows the entire drama of human existence. The ego begins innocently. It is like a mask given to a child in a play. Here, wear this. It will help you find your role. And at first, it is playful. The child experiments with identity. I am this. I am not that. But soon, the mask sticks. The actor forgets it is a performance. The child forgets there was ever a time before the I. From this moment on, the ego will insist on its own permanence. It will claim every thought, every feeling. This is mine. This is me. It will build walls of memory and call them identity. It will fear the loss of its image because without the story, it does not exist. Yet beneath all of this, the original awareness has not disappeared. It is still there, the silent witness, untouched by the games of identity. It watches the rise of the ego with quiet patience, waiting for the moment when one might look inward and remember. So the ego is born not as an enemy, but as a tool. The tragedy is only in forgetting that it is a tool. For when the tool becomes the master, the human being becomes enslaved to a mask. And it is here, at this very beginning, that the seeds of suffering are quietly planted. The theater of masks. Once the ego has taken shape, life becomes a kind of stage. Each person steps onto it wearing the mask of I. The mask is not only personal, it is social. It tells others who we are supposed to be. It defines our role in the great theater of human interaction. Think of how often we adjust ourselves depending on where we stand. At work, the mask is professional, controlled, respectable. At home, it shifts to parent, partner, or child. With friends, it may loosen, becoming playful, even careless. But at the center of all these shifting faces, the ego whispers, "This is me. This is who I am." The problem is not that we wear masks. Masks are useful. They help us function in society, communicate, and play our part in the unfolding story of human life. The problem is that we forget the masks are masks. We confuse the costume with the actor. We begin to live as though the role were the essence and the performance the reality. Consider the actor who plays a king. On stage, he is surrounded by respect, crowned with authority, feared and adored. But when the play ends, he returns to his ordinary life. He knows the crown was a prop, the throne a piece of wood, the adoration a temporary illusion. The danger of the ego is that we no longer step off the stage. We carry the role everywhere. We insist, "I am this character, and I must defend it at all costs." This insistence creates endless tension, because the mask can never be perfect. Someone will always challenge it, doubt it, or fail to recognize it. And so much of human conflict arises not from reality itself, but from the fragile defense of an image. Yet there is something quietly liberating in seeing this clearly. To notice that life is a play does not make it meaningless. On the contrary, it makes it more playful. When you know the crown is a prop, you can wear it lightly. When you know the role is a role, you can act it with freedom, without fear of losing yourself. But for most, this realization has not yet arrived. The theater is mistaken for reality. The mask is mistaken for the face. And so the human being becomes trapped in a performance, exhausting himself in a drama that was never meant to be taken so seriously. If this reflection resonates with you, share in the comments how you notice the masks you wear in daily life. Your story may help someone else recognize their own. The invisible prison. The ego, once mistaken for the self, does not rest quietly. It becomes a restless guardian, forever protecting its fragile identity. And here is the paradox. The more we cling to this image of me, the more fragile we feel. The harder we defend the mask, the more easily it cracks. This is the beginning of the invisible prison. Unlike walls of stone, this prison is built of thought. Its bars are beliefs, fears, and assumptions about who we are and what we must preserve. And though invisible, it shapes every step we take. Think of how much of life is ruled by fear. The fear of failure, because failure threatens the story of success we cling to. The fear of rejection, because rejection pierces the image we hope others see. The fear of death, because the ego cannot imagine an existence in which it is not the center. Each of these fears is a chain binding us to the mask, and yet most people never see the chains. They call it ambition. They call it responsibility. They call it realism. But beneath those respectable names, there is anxiety. The quiet panic of a character who knows the play must one day end. The prison is invisible precisely because it feels natural. It feels normal to strive endlessly, to defend my opinion, to seek approval, to tremble at the thought of losing. But step back for a moment. Notice what all of this has in common. It is always about me. It is always about the mask, about protecting something that was never the true self to begin with. And here lies the root of human suffering. Not in pain itself, but in the ego's desperate resistance to pain. Not in loss itself, but in the ego's refusal to let go. Not in death itself, but in the ego's terror of disappearing. What makes the prison so convincing is that it is invisible. But once it is seen, even for a moment, a crack opens in the walls. The awareness behind the ego begins to glimpse its own freedom. It begins to sense, perhaps I am not the prisoner. Perhaps I am the space in which the prison appears. And it is here that the journey begins to turn, for only by seeing the illusion clearly can one begin to walk beyond it. If this reflection stirs something in you, pause and share your thoughts below. Often, in speaking of the prison, we begin to notice its doors. The useful role of the ego. It would be easy to conclude that the ego is the villain of our story, that it must be destroyed, cut away, or silenced forever. But this, too, is an illusion. Because without the ego, life in the human world would be nearly impossible. The ego is a tool, and like any tool, its value depends on how it is used. A knife can cut bread or it can wound. A fire can warm a home or burn it down. The same is true of the ego. Think of the simple ways it serves us. It remembers names, addresses, histories. It helps us navigate society, make plans, sign our work, and take responsibility. It allows us to say, I will meet you tomorrow, and actually show up. It gives us a sense of continuity, enough to function as one person across time. The problem is not the existence of the ego. The problem is the forgetting that the ego is not the master, but the servant. We were meant to use it lightly, as one might wear a uniform at work or a costume in a play. But somewhere along the way, the uniform fused with the skin. The actor believed the costume was his body, and so the tool became the tyrant. To understand the ego is to place it back in its proper place, to see it not as the essence of being, but as a practical convenience. It is the face we wear when buying bread at the market, the name we sign at the bank, the voice that speaks in a meeting. There is nothing wrong with that. It is only when the mask insists, I am all that you are, that suffering begins. Imagine carrying a hammer everywhere, refusing to put it down. You eat with it, sleep with it, walk with it. Soon, the tool that was once useful becomes a burden. The ego is like that hammer. It is meant to be picked up when needed and set down when not. And here lies the quiet invitation, not to kill the ego, but to see it clearly. Not to reject it, but to use it as one uses any instrument, with awareness. In this clarity, a new kind of freedom appears. The ego is no longer the prison guard. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a simple, temporary mask worn lightly in the dance of life. If you wish to keep exploring these deeper truths, subscribe and stay with us. The next steps will move beyond the mask entirely, into the mystery of what you truly are, beyond the illusion. If the ego is a mask, then what lies behind it? If the self we defend so fiercely is not the essence, then who or what is watching all of this unfold? The truth is both unsettling and liberating. For behind the mask, behind the thoughts and the endless chatter of the inner voice, there is something vast, and silent. It does not speak, yet it hears. It does not act, yet it allows action to arise. It does not cling to identity, yet it makes every identity possible. This silent awareness is not a character on the stage. It is the space in which the stage appears. It is the screen upon which the movie of me is projected. And unlike the fragile ego, this awareness does not fear loss, for it was never bound to a story in the first place. To glimpse this is to experience a profound shift. The fears that once seemed unbearable begin to lose their weight. The fear of rejection softens because awareness does not need approval. The fear of failure weakens because awareness does not measure itself against success. Even the fear of death begins to dissolve because awareness was never born and cannot die. This does not mean the ego disappears. It still rises, still speaks, still plays its role. But now it is transparent, like a cloud drifting across the sky. You see it, you use it, but you no longer mistake it for the whole of who you are. Here is the paradox. When the ego is understood, life becomes lighter. You can wear your roles more freely, laugh at your mistakes, and let go of the need to control every outcome. You discover that freedom was never about perfecting the mask, but about realizing you are not the mask at all. And in this realization, a deeper peace begins to shine through. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of recognition. A peace that says, I am not only this fragile I am the awareness in which the I comes and goes. This is the step beyond illusion, not a rejection of the ego, but a waking up to the deeper ground of being that was always present, patiently waiting behind the performance of me. The quiet awakening. The journey through the ego is not a straight path, nor is it a battle to be won. It is more like the turning of a mirror, a slow recognition that what we thought was the whole of ourselves was only a reflection. From the birth of the ego, when a child first hears its name, to the theater of masks, where roles are played so convincingly they feel real, to the invisible prison, where fear and longing hold us captive, to the rediscovery that the ego is a tool, not a master, and finally, to the awakening that behind it all, there is something vast, silent, and free. This has always been the rhythm of human life. The lesson is not to hate the ego, nor to glorify it. It is simply to see it clearly, to understand that it is a character, useful for the play, but never the whole of who you are. When this is seen, even for a moment, the tension of life begins to loosen. The endless struggle to defend me softens, and something far more spacious is revealed. This spaciousness is not distant, nor hidden. It has been present in every breath you have ever taken. It is the quiet awareness listening to these words now. It asks for nothing, and yet it is everything. And here lies the gentle liberation. You do not need to kill the ego. You do not need to run away from it. You only need to recognize it for what it is: a mask, a tool, a temporary face. The moment you see it, truly see it, the game changes. You are no longer trapped in the role. You are free to act, to speak, to live, without forgetting the silent ground beneath it all. So perhaps the invitation is this. The next time you feel the weight of defending yourself, pause. The next time fear whispers its anxious story, pause. Ask quietly, who is afraid? Who is speaking? Who is this I that trembles? And notice that behind the voice, there is a stillness that does not tremble. That stillness is closer to who you truly are than any story could ever be. If these reflections have touched something in you, carry them gently. Let them echo, not as ideas to cling to, but as reminders to return again and again to the simple awareness behind the mask. And if you wish to keep exploring, subscribe and stay with us. For this is only the beginning of a much deeper journey.